Okay, so the group stage for the Siege Esports World Cup just ended around a couple hours ago, and I wanted to give a quick recap of the groups and a preview for the playoffs, which happen in around 15 hours from now when they start. So let's just start with Group A. Um, these matchups, in my mind, for the most part, were very predictable. Um, I think I actually only predicted one incorrect um, match this game, which of course resulted in slightly different matchups. But I did predict the four qualifying teams here, which was nice. But yeah, the only wrong prediction that I got was I had Luminosity beating Bliss, but Bliss ended up beating Luminosity. But other than that, yeah, Cruelty suck. Everybody knows that. Um, I did think W7M would be SSG. I thought it'd be a closer game, honestly, but W7M they they just kind of let SSG like run at them, and they just got a bunch of free kills. Um, BDS then took W7M to a Nighthaven Labs game where W7M looked very uncomfortable on Labs. So a bit concerned about their map pool. Um, but I still think this W7M team is very dangerous because they are very, very aggressive. And then the one game I predicted wrong, in my mind, this was a toss up. But Bliss had a really cool game plan coming into this one where they banned Vigil on defense so they could run a lot of Deimos and on attack, along with Jackal, so they could, which would allow them to just use a few drones to get scans on players in the prep phase, so they can hunt down player roamers, which was really cool. It was very effective um, strategy, and it worked out very well for Bliss. And then Liquid made short work of Talon, and Bliss put up a decent fight against Liquid, but Liquid were clearly just the better team in this, and BDS and Liquid ended up qualifying through the upper bracket. And through the for the lower bracket, which was best of threes, again, Cruelty lost to SSG. This was a little concerning when I was watching for SSG because when most teams play, I pretty much expect any team to just like in T1 to just like run over Cruelty basically. That makes these events. So yeah, and then they also ended up beating Bliss. Probably this is definitely like the most disappointing game from Bliss this tournament. Um, I think most people probably expected Liquid to win this, but I actually um, thought Bliss had a decent chance in this because every time Bliss and the SSG have played in the past, it's always been close. Now it's always been in SSG's favor, but this was probably the most one-sided game that SSG has played against Bliss in quite some time. And on the bottom half of the lower bracket, the first game was Luminosity versus Talon. This was definitely a disappointing tournament for Talon. Um, Not particularly results wise, I'd say. Of course, like, yeah, you don't want to get bounced in the first round and you don't want to get stomped. But the disappointing factor for me was when watching them, it was just like so many simple fundamental mistakes, like even just missing simple C4s and things like that. It was really bad, and it was also concerning for Luminosity that Luminosity was playing close games against a PSC Talon that was playing that poorly, um, which didn't bode well for Luminosity in their next match as they um, had a decently close game against them on Clubhouse. But this is probably one of LG's better maps, Clubhouse, and then they kind of got stomped on Cafe. Um, which was and their mental definitely was in a rough state on this last round of Clubhouse. You could just kind of tell. after the timeout that they didn't have the energy, which was hard to see. But yeah, W7M were just the better team. So very predictable teams in my opinion that went through to the playoffs in Group A. Group E was slightly more unpredictable, particularly one matchup. Um, so again, similar to the Cruelty BDS game, Dark Zero versus Geek was like, for me, Geek and Cruelty were like by far in my mind the two worst teams here, and it definitely showed. Um, as Dark Zero immediately sent Geek to the lower bracket. Um, and Furia play ITB in their first in their first game of the upper bracket, where Furia beat ITB. ITB put up a decent fight, but Furia are just too good, which sets up a date for Furia and Dark Zero. And this was a very entertaining game, which resulted in a max overtime win for Furia on Border, sending Dark Zero to the lower bracket and Furia to the playoffs. And then we had Wolves Bleed. I did have predict Bleed to beat Wolves. I honestly thought it'd be closer because every time these teams have played, it has also been close. And this one wasn't as close as I saw it. 7-4 isn't horrible, but wasn't as close. But I don't know. Wolves definitely could have taken Bleed to a better map in my opinion, because Nighthaven is certainly one of their most preferable maps for Bleed. And also FaZe versus Scars. Scars also put up a decent fight against FaZe, but FaZe are just or again similar to the Furia ITB game, FaZe were just too good. And then this was for me the most unpredictable game of the group stage was Bleed versus FaZe, especially the map, because both these teams like this map, and FaZe is definitely like a strat. Has a bunch of their came up with a bunch of the strats that especially are used in the Brazilian league for Nighthaven, and it's kind of funny because Bleed basically beat FaZe with their own strats because they basically copied them. So Bleed edged out a game versus FaZe on again Nighthaven. So Bleed won 2 Nighthaven games in best of ones and qualified to the playoffs. So, which is big for Bleed too, because this is their first time finally cracking into top 8 at an international LAN after missing out multiple times at recent events after good starts. So nice to see them finally crack into that top 8, and they don't have to play Space Station in the first round for once. And then for the lower bracket, we had Geek versus ITB. Again, Geek definitely one of the worst teams here, and they got crushed, and which set up a date between ITB and FaZe. And FaZe did end up winning this game in a 2-1. It looked rough after the first game, but it's clear that to me that after Manchester too, because FaZe did this in Manchester, where this is certainly a more dangerous game to pick Chalet in, because in Manchester FaZe did it first game of Swiss, which it didn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things, but they did it in an elimination best of 3 game here, where they let Chalet through, and Chalet is still continues to be like FaZe's worst map. So hopefully we don't see it out of FaZe again. I don't expect them to play it again. So yeah, and then Wolves versus Scars. This is definitely a huge win for Scars. It's Scars I think it's Scars first. Is it Scars first win against like a team from one of the big 3 regions since Copenhagen, I think. I'm not certain on that, but I believe it is, which is big for them, especially the Chalet. Pretty rough tournament for Wolves overall. They came in with 2 new players who had never played much tier 1 level siege at all, and in my and I don't think I've ever been to a massive event like this, at least as a player. So and it definitely showed. I think I think Asa had like a really rough game on one of these maps. I'm pretty sure he went like 0-8 or something. It was bad. Um, yeah, rough showing for Wolves. Wolves were definitely my hardest team to most unpredictable team this coming into this tournament because of the new players. Because sometimes those new players can put a team like into kind of a honeymoon phase where they have like a couple, those first few months are just like they play very well, um, but it wasn't the case here, and Wolves just kind of fizzled out right at the start of the tournament, and then Dark Zero versus Scars. This is a really fun game actually, even though DZ won 2-0. There were Scars were very competitive this game, and put up a good fight. And I genuinely think that if Scars had like better composure, especially on the late round, on their defense specifically, they would have at least won a map here, and could have even won the series, because there were definitely multiple times where Scars had a man advantage, 30 seconds left, and they're on defense, and then they kind of just crumble in the last seconds, and Dark Zero just kind of get a ton of kills, and that happened a few times to Scars. So it was definitely rough to see, um, but it was good to see. It was nice to see that they're definitely on an upwards trajectory again, because after Copenhagen, they were on a bit of a downward trajectory internationally, even though they were still continuing to make every international event. They were definitely playing worse, but this is definitely their best results in a while, even though it's definitely not what they wanted. So overall for Group B, I predicted every team going to the playoffs correct except for Bleed. I did actually have in my initial predictions, I had FaZe beating Bleed in this game here, which would have had ITB play Bleed, and if that game happened, I thought ITB would have beaten Bleed, but we'll never know because Bleed beat FaZe instead. So but I was kind of happy. I was happy I got this wrong. Um, um, but it was just so hard to predict Bleed to go through, because every time before, when they seemed like they were about to make it, they just crumbled. But now that they show they can actually make a top 8 at a large event, then I'd definitely be more confident in predicting them in higher placements in the future. So now for our 4 playoff games tomorrow, they're both happening. 2 games are happening at the same time each. So this is Eastern time. So uh, Liquid Dark Zero and Bleed W7M start at 11 Eastern, and then BDS and FaZe both start at 2 o'clock Eastern. Um, BDS FaZe and then Furious Space Station start 2 o'clock Eastern. But it's nice to see that we don't have like any interregional matchups here, because we do have 4 Brazilian teams in the playoffs, but they managed to split them all up at least. So this is definitely, I think this is definitely like some of the best set of games we could have gotten, because these are all going to be BO3s, and I think they're all kind of bangers. Some more than others still, but like I think all these games are like really good. As a Siege fan in their own right. Um, so for the first game, Liquid versus Dark Zero, incredibly hard game to predict, especially with Liquid continuing to look better and better recently, and Dark Zero also continuing to look better and better as time continues with each of their 2024 rosters. Um, and last time, okay, Last time Liquid and Dark Zero played was SI 2024. This was, of course, when Liquid had Volps on the team still, and this Liquid was certainly in a much worse state than the current Liquid that we are getting. So I wouldn't. I would take this result for a grain of salt. But last time, recently they played, it was a 2-0 for Dark Zero, and it was a pretty easy 2-0. But this was also in a very um, not in a different meta too. So that I don't think that result means too much because Liquid are definitely are a much different team than they were at SI like 6 months ago. So I think this is definitely going to be a much closer game. I definitely see this going 3 maps. I'd be surprised if this is only 2 maps. And I think that either of these games, whoever wins this, it's gonna be a close game. It's definitely gonna be map 3. But I think Dark Zero have just been playing a little better than Liquid. And I kind of got to see a little more out of Liquid. Dark Zero have played better teams, and they barely lost to Furia, while Liquid have only played Bliss and PSG Talon, who neither of them had very good tournaments at all. But at least Liquid was able to dominate both of their opponents. Neither of their games looked very difficult for them, while Darkseer definitely had a few harder games than Liquid did. But I still think these teams match up pretty well together, as Liquid don't have that aggressive play style that Dark Zero's slow, methodical gameplay usually works well against. Where Liquid will just peek into the DZ players, and I think that they'll match up pretty good. So this is definitely going to be a map 3 game where either of these teams could win, but I'm just going to take a Dark Zero to win 2-1 this game. Okay, so now we have Bleed and W7M. The last time these two teams played, this W7M roster was under Los. It was at SI 2024, and neither of these teams were exactly the same. Where Bleed still had Ashby and Los had not picked up Volps yet, and they still had Maya. And I can't remember if I don't think Dodez was on this Los team yet. I don't remember, but I know Dots Dash and Lobin were on this team. I can't remember if Dodez was too. But last time they played, Bleed, even with a roster that I think isn't as good as Bleed's current roster, Bleed kind of crushed them. But I do think the players on this W7M team are this collection of players as a team is better than that Los team. And I think this is definitely going to be a closer game. And I could definitely see this going either way as well, because this W7M roster is very aggressive. Lobin and Volps will just swing everyone. I mean, the whole team will, especially watching their game versus Luminosity today. They do not care. They will just swing you and swing you and swing you until your entire team is dead. And it's pretty fun to watch because they play so aggressive. But I do think Bleed also have the gun skill to match, especially like with Reaps and Turdsta. If they are having a good game, then I think this will be a very competitive match. Again, a hard one to predict, but this one I'm just gonna I want to see Bleed win, so I'm gonna predict Bleed to win 2-1. But so yeah, I'm gonna predict Bleed to win 2-1 just because I want to see this team do well. Uh, Now FaZe versus BDS. This is I don't know if this one or Dark Zero Liquid are gonna be my match of the day, but for me, I think I'm leaning towards this one being my match of the day. Um, as both these teams are the two previous second place teams at Manchester and SI respectively, and one of them will be eliminated in the quarterfinals here. So the last time they played each other was a long time ago in the Sweden major in 2021. So they both have very different teams now. So and 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 much better teams. Even though I think this is the Sweden major that FaZe actually ended up winning. So arguably you could say that that is technically the best FaZe team because they won that major. But I do think like this current FaZe roster is very good and on par with that 2021 FaZe. And like if this roster was playing in 2021, they would also be very good. Um, yeah, this is a very hard one to predict too, but I think I'm gonna take BDS to win this 2-1. BDS have looked very on form this tournament, and it's hard to predict against them in Saudi as well, because of their history in Saudi with all their success, and also FaZe haven't looked completely immortal like they did around 6 months ago, um, where they literally couldn't be beaten. It seemed like, whereas BDS um, have looked just very good to start this tournament, and very much informal. FaZe they've let a few things have letting things slip a little bit. So I think I'm gonna take BDS to win this 2-1. And now for the last match, we're gonna have Furia and then SSG. Um, and the last time they played each other was at SI, um, when this Furia roster was still under W7M, um, where it was a decently close game, except for the last map was not very close. But this is really the only time SSG has ever been competitive against this W7M roster. Every other time SSG have played uh, this Furia roster, they have kind of gotten stomped really badly. So for that reason, I am definitely going to take Furia to win this game, also 2-1. That's funny. I'm predicting. I'm predicting all these games to go 3 maps, even though that's because I think all these games are like really. I genuinely think all these games are pretty like well balanced. Like each of these teams are gonna like get to their own maps that they like, win their maps, and then go to that map 3. I feel like there's no teams here that like I see as like extremely weaker than the others. I think the one team you could argue would be SSG because of their rough loss to W7M and slight struggles against Cruelty. Good win against Bliss though. So and I definitely think like SSG after the first loss they've started to like pick things up. So I wouldn't say SSG is looking that weak right now, but definitely like numbers wise, you could definitely consider SSG like the weakest team out of the 8 here right now. So yeah, I have Dark Zero winning this 2-1. I have Bleed winning this 2-1. I have BDS winning this 2-1, and then I have Furia winning this 2-1. And yeah, and there was one more thing that I wanted to go over, just because was crazy. I wanted to go over just a couple of the clips from today, just because they were really fun. So the first one was from the Bliss SSG game, and I'm sure everybody's probably seen this, but this one this one is really good. Where I'm not sure if this is like, I'm pretty sure it's a strat because they play when they did this against Cool yesterday. I was like, oh, they're just trolling, but they did it against Bliss. I don't think they would troll in a game against Bliss with elimination on the line, or well, qualification on the line to the playoffs online or ticket home. So like I genuinely think this is part of their like actual strat. Um, I'm not sure if it like worked out exactly how it goes, but because this buck happens to be here holding this hatch because Bliss just did a cheese plant on the teller's window with like smokes and the glass with the blitz. Um, because they did that cheese plant and they just had this buck kind of lurking here in server, just watching the rotate down from this hatch. Um, the Cav was conveniently here, and probably not conveniently. The Cav was placed here in the case a guy would go here, knowing Bliss would send a player here alone.
Right now.
So they get the interrogation, which completely changes the round. And there's 18 seconds with the diffuse time left, and they haven't gotten on it yet. But because of this interrogation now, they now have more bodies up than Bliss, and they know where they all are. And SSG are already in the perfect positions to get these kills. Like J90 is already on the window on the balcony to get the lion up here, and the other three players are gonna just swarm these two on the window.
Changes to how this is going to
while
go.
one hops on the diffuser. So they're all Bliss is definitely like all freaking out now because of the interrogation. This line also trolled. He watched this window got shot open, and it's the only way he can really die is somebody coming out this window because he's repelled up so high. Because the only other way he can die is if SSG player like literally jumps out the site window, but that's where his other two teammates are. So he doesn't need to watch that. So he literally, I don't know why he got off of looking at this window, but he did. And I definitely think like if he just stared at this window, it would have maybe gone better. He probably still would have gotten pre-fired because of the interrogation. But yeah, Ashen was diffusing while everyone was getting kills. But yeah, that round was just wild. That the interrogation was just, it was just perfect for that. And then this play was just crazy. Where they had an echo camera in lobby window to look at the window repel on bank. And you think, oh yeah, if this is a nice play, they'll catch one person, you know? They'll get one person rappelling up.
They went fish like straight out of the window.
But you know what? He gets 3. He somehow gets 3. Only one off the echo cam because the other 2 were repelled on the other side. But he ends up getting 3 off this run out. This was just an insane run out. So yeah, those were some fun moments from today. And of course, definitely a big emphasis on the shield meta on attack, and it doesn't really seem you can really do much about it, because even though like most teams are banning, Monty's getting banned a lot. Blitz, they just run blitz instead. And also a zombie continues to probably be like the best defending operator, even after the very recent nerf. And I'm not surprised she's still the best. Her gadget is just so good. So yeah, Monty and Blitz continue to be nuisances to the meta right now, and you just can't you can't do anything about it because these because the players who are really good with the shields, particularly on the Monty, like you can't kill them unless you get like a perfect C4 kill. Basically, you like realistically you cannot kill them. But yeah, anyways, that is my group stage recap and then little playoff preview slash prediction. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to like this and maybe subscribe. And also, again, I always ask for any, if you have anything you liked or didn't like or any criticism, please feel free to leave it below in the comments, as long as it's criticism about like the content, of course, not about like, you know, you're an idiot. Like, yeah, sure, maybe I am an idiot, but I don't know. I don't really think so. I predicted most of these games correctly. They went pretty much how I expected them to. So anyways, thank you for watching and have a good day.